Our mic is live.
Our mic is live, and we do have a quorum. We do have a quorum.
I did not count.
You do have a quorum, yes. Thank you very much. All right. So. All right.
Yes.
I'm going to call the meeting to order, please. Thursday, February 27th, meeting of the Regional Transit Partnership. All right. As we usually start our meetings, we'll start with introduction. Christine.
Should we start with Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission?
Oh, Carl, Director of Charlottesville Area Training. Mike Murphy, John. Andy Parker, Rural Representative, John.
Ben Chambers, City of Charlottesville. Scott Silsor, DVA.
Natalie Osher, Charlottesville City Council.
Diane McKeel, Albemarle County.
Mike Bird, Albemarle County.
Ian Wall, Albemarle County.
Peter Krebs, the Team on Environmental Council.
And Fleischer for Peter Thompson, Charlottesville Area Alliance.
Lucinda Shannon with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission.
And President Thomas, EJ. Okay. Well, goodbye. Thank you very much. I don't think I have any announcements right this minute. If anybody else does, I'll just look around. No? All right. Our first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Looking at Natalie. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Scott. All right. Lucinda, would you call for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Counselor
Jen.
Pinkston. Not here. Counselor Oshrin. Supervisor McKeel.
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt.
Yep.
Ms. Miller.
I can't see if she's on the screen.
She is there. She's just needs to get promoted to a
So
panelist.
before she can go, we need to. Yeah.
Right.
If Katie's there, then we need to.
Yeah.
Have a motion to include. Katie, are you there?
There you go. Now she's here. Katie,
Katie,
yes.
good afternoon. Then let's stop for a minute because now that we know Katie's on the screen, I need a motion to invite Katie to join our meeting.
So moved.
Thank you very much. And there's a second. So, Lucinda, would you call the roll for that particular vote?
Counselor Pinkston. Oh, sorry. Counselor Oshrin.
Yeah.
Supervisor McKeel.
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt.
Aye.
Ms. Miller. Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Silstor.
Yes.
Director, and that's all.
All right. Katie, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. I just want to make sure you're there. Now, let's go back. We had a motion and we had a second for the agenda.
We still need, Ms. Miller, sorry to interrupt, but we need you to state your reason
Oh, you're
for
right.
within virtual
That's
and your
right.
location for the
Good
minutes.
catch. Thank you very much, Katie.
Yep, I needed to be in Richmond for a meeting in our office until about 3, so wasn't going to be able to make it in time.
Okay, so you're in Richmond. All right. Thank you very much. All right. We had a motion and we had a second for the agenda. So let's go back and start with that vote again, Lucinda, if that's all right, because we
Yes.
interrupted it.
Yes. Counselor Pinkston. Sorry. Counselor Oshrin.
Yeah.
Supervisor McKeel.
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt.
Aye.
Ms. Miller. Ms.
Yes. Yeah.
Director Silstor,
Yes.
and that is all. Oh, wait, Director Parker.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right, so we have an agenda. The next item is approval of our meeting minutes from January the 23rd. They are at your place. And let me just, since they were not included as an attachment, I'm going to give you all to take a look at them and see if you have any questions or comments. And then we'll vote to approve these.
Daniel Richardson is joining for Jamie for Albemarle County School,
Okay, that's great.
and he's on, but we don't have to vote him in because he's not.
Wait. All right, does everybody, any comments or questions about the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the January 23rd minutes.
So moved.
All right, Natalie has a motion on the table and a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. All right. We have a motion and a second. Lucinda?
Counselor Ocean. Supervisor McNeil.
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt.
Aye.
Ms. Miller.
Aye.
Director Parker.
Yes.
Director Silsdorf.
Yes.
And that is all.
All right, minutes are approved. And do we have, Lucinda, anyone who signed up to speak? Public comment is our next.
If anyone in the public audience would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. And there's no one here. So there are no public comments.
Okay, all right. Then we'll move to the RTA legislative discussion. And is there's Danny.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Welcome, Danny. Would you introduce yourself, and I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor McKeel. I am Danny Plugger. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Transit Association. And I want to thank Diantha. She's our past president of VTA, and I saw many other friends in the room as well. And also thank the supervisor for your help on the bus stop bill last year, which we got through, which was very important. And so I've been asked to kind of just have a conversation with y'all. There's not much of a presentation, but I did pull some materials together that I can show y'all to help facilitate also the regional conversation that Charlottesville and Albemarle will be having. I will give you a little bit of legislative context in that what I am hearing through the grapevine is that next year will probably be a transportation session. That happens in the General Assembly usually every 5 to 10 years. Our last one was in 2020. Before that, the last major one was 2013. And so it happens every now and again when transportation becomes a very significant issue. And that is what is happening today, both impacting transit as well as roadways with our state revenue not keeping up with the growth of expenses for our transit agencies nor for our road systems. By 2029, maintenance on our roadways will overtake 50% of the construction fund. And so on the road side of things, they have the ability to pull from construction when there are deficits in the state highway maintenance program. And so they have been doing that the last couple of years, and it is starting to rapidly expand. And so as I said, by 2029, rough projections are that half of all construction money will be diverted over just to roadway maintenance, filling potholes and fixing streets and doing repaving. And so this is a widespread issue. It is not just impacting transit, it's also impacting roads and other modes. And so as the conversations are beginning, there is a subcommittee up in Northern Virginia made up of legislators called SJ28 that is looking at both regional and statewide funding sources, primarily for transit, but I imagine that will be expanded for everything. And then also part of those conversations are how do we improve our regional funding? And from VTA's perspective, our goal is to ensure that any regional revenues benefit transit. And I know y'all have activated the Charlottesville and Albemarle Authority, which is very exciting, which is kind of kicking off this conversation of figuring out now that you have that fund, now that you have that resource, how do we get some revenue dedicated to it? And so I will briefly share my screen and what I'm about to put up, and I'll send a PDF over to everybody. I've been working on this for about the last month or so, going through the state code and through all the different avenues. And what I will be showing you is, if I can share my screen. So on the screen right now are the different entities, regional entities across the Commonwealth of Virginia, what type of entity they are, as well as the different revenue sources that are directed to regional transportation entities. So the first four are Northern Virginia focused.
Danny, I'm hearing all that. Is there a way that
Sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing.
Danny, it's, yeah, we're having trouble hearing as well.
Okay.
And is there a way you can make that screen larger? Because it's hard for us to see. There you go, maybe. Yeah, that's getting much better.
Okay.
Well, we can't see all of it, but we've gone from one extreme to the other.
We're on the eye exam sheet.
And I will share this, when I'm done, get it over to you so that you will have physical copies. I will put the asterisks and say this is a draft, of a lot of work of tracking down these different things, but this will begin giving you an idea of what has historically been used for transportation revenue on a regional basis. And so I'll go down quickly the first one and then kind of scroll over a little bit, and I may zoom in and out. So my apologies. But the first one is the WMATA Capital Fund up in Northern Virginia, 100% transit focused. It gets the first tranche of money from the gas tax that is directed to the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. It also gets 3% of the Northern Virginia occupancy tax, the hotel rental tax. It gets 10% or 10 cents of every $100 from the grantor's tax, which is the sale of property. It does not get any sales and use tax, no regional toll revenue, but it does get $20 million off the top of the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. And then 1/4 of the motor vehicle rental tax statewide. And they have the ability to issue bonds. And so the second Northern Virginia item or authority or entity is NVTA, the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. Going back to the creation in 2002, 70% of their funds can be used for multimodal, and up to 30% of that can be used for transit, but it does not have a dedicated transit component. And their primary revenue sources are another 10% on the grantor's tax, and they get 0.7% for the sales and use tax. And they also get the other half of $40 million that's directed to Northern Virginia. They get the $20 million off the top of this Commonwealth Commonwealth Transportation Fund. And they also have the ability to issue bonds. The third Northern Virginia entity is the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. MVTA is within the sphere of NVTA. So MVTA is a slightly larger organization. MVTC is within their region or within their borders. And they get 9 cents per gallon for the gas and alternative fuels tax. And they also get inside the Beltway and I-395 toll revenues, primarily through the hot lanes. And those projects must support commuters who utilize those corridors. And their gas tax revenue, the part of the tranche goes to their commuter rail fund. Another portion goes to the WMATA Capital Fund, as I mentioned below. And then they can support jurisdictions' contributions to WMATA. So they are very streamlined in how they can utilize their regional resources. And the other one in Northern Virginia is the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commissions. They are very similar to NVTC, both in regards to how they can utilize their funds, but also their funding sources. PRTC is a little bit different because their regional revenues go to the host or home locality first, and then are directed to transit from Prince William County, Manassas City, Manassas Park, Stafford, etc., to support VRE, OmniRide, and Fairfax Go. And so their regional revenues do not go directly to the commission. They first go to the locality and then are funded to the commission, very similar to the same items of MVTC. And then getting out of Northern Virginia down to Hampton Roads, you have the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission. They are also, even though commissions in their name, an authority, none of their money goes towards transit, but they do implement the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Fund, which will be the second part. HR TAC, which is building the new Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel as we speak, they get a dedicated portion of the gas tax, the regional gas tax, that everybody in the state pays. They also get access to the sales and use tax. And then starting, I believe, next year, they will be getting any toll revenue from the new toll lanes when the tunnels open up down in Hampton Roads. And they also have the ability to issue bonds. The second item is the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Fund. This is solely directed towards HRT, Hampton Roads Transit, but it is managed by HR TAC. 100% transit focused, 1% of the hotel occupancy tax in the jurisdiction covered by HRT, as well as 6 cents of the grantor's tax are directed to this particular fund. They also get $20 million from statewide recordation taxes, which is the other side of the grantor's tax on the buyer side, is directed into this fund to support HRT at about $33.7 million a year. And then the last two in Central Virginia, this is the last authority that has been created. One of the things that we made sure to do, kind of having learned our lesson from HR TAC, is that we insisted on a portion being dedicated to transit. So 15% of all revenue generated through this authority automatically gets directed to transit, primarily GRTC. Likewise, they get a portion of the gas tax, the regional gas tax, as well as the sales and use tax. And they generate about $240 million a year, give or take, with $15 million of that being directed to transit. And another tranche goes back to the localities in that authority for some of their local or regional projects of significance. And then the final one is an improvement district. It's very similar to a regional fund for I-81, no funding directed to transit, and they get the gas tax to primarily improve Interstate 81 up and down the corridor. And they generate about $80 to $90 million a year, and they do leverage those with bonds. And so these are the different examples across the Commonwealth of either regional authorities, compacts, commissions, or funds that get regional revenue. One thing of note is in 2020, during the last Transportation Omnibus, the regional gas tax now impacts everybody. And so for those regions that are not in a MVTC or MVTA, CVTA here in Central Virginia, or Hampton Roads, or I-81, those regional gas tax revenues actually go back and are dedicated to the VDOT districts to put through smart scale for the district grants. So everybody pays that regional gas tax depending on where you live, and if you have a dedicated transportation authority of some sort, is dependent upon how that gas tax revenue is directed. And so with that, I will just take a break and see if there's any questions, any thoughts, and if I can answer anything for anybody.
That's great, Danny. Thank you very much. And I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm looking to see if folks have questions. It really would be great though, if you can share this with us. Send it to
Absolutely.
Lucinda and we'll,
I
we'll
did
share it
have
around.
I did have a question. So that grantor's tax, 10 cents on $100, is that the tax, or is it 10 cents on the $100 of the tax revenue?
It's so the grantor's tax, depending on the locality that you live in, could be more than 10 cents. That 10 cents per $100 is the amount that is dedicated to transit. And so if you sell a house, $100,000, 1,000 of that is going to be taxed at 10 cents. So it generates, and I apologize, I'm doing math off the fly, which is always a very dangerous thing. You know, $100 is dedicated to transit. And so that kind of revenue.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Danny, I do have a question. Now, my assumption is that we always have to do Mother May I. So regardless of what we choose, we'll have to go to the legislature to ask permission for whichever one or whatever mix we decide. We need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the benefits for you doing all the work that y'all are doing today, and getting the authority up and running, is that if there is a large transportation omnibus, next year that will be a lot easier to kind of get these decisions made in a bill that may be 100 pages versus something that is, you know, has the ability to get attacked independently. And so there could be a very large bill where this is just one very small component of everything else that's going to be included in it. And I think there will be a lot of different revenue sources. I know Northern Virginia is looking at increasing regional sales tax. They're looking at some other revenue sources. And so we want to ensure that, you know, there are transit components. But, you know, the listing is things that have already been identified and utilized elsewhere. And so I think the General Assembly has become a little bit more comfortable with regional entities and regional revenue versus where they were 15 years ago. With so many different entities partaking, especially I-81, Hampton Roads, and Central Virginia. And so this is a good time to kind of begin having those conversations. I know Deeds was the sponsor of the authority that y'all created back, I believe, when he was in the House of Delegates. And so, you know, he is on the Senate Finance Committee, and he has a lot of sway. And so he will, you know, be a good advocate. I think one thing for you all to kind of decide is how much revenue are you trying to raise, and ensuring that whatever funding sources y'all come or y'all discuss or y'all want to advance, that everybody is in agreement. If I think everybody agrees that, hey, we want to do this, this, and this, it makes it that much easier for the legislature to get behind it, especially if your entire delegation is on the same page. For the ones that have failed, Fredericksburg, it's because there's not agreement among the stakeholders in those regions, whether it be local government or legislators. And so it's very important to kind of get ahead of that and make sure the region speaks with one voice.
Okay. So everybody needs to be on the same page.
Yes, I would highly recommend.
As a question. I noticed that several of these you mentioned specifically, these authorities had to go to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, but some of them did not. I'm just trying, so we would not have to, we go to the General Assembly, but we don't have to have ours approved by the Commonwealth Transportation Board.
So none of these have to go through the CTB. They are pass-through revenues, aside from, I think, maybe I-81. And that's just a very unique entity. What I was mentioning with the CTB is that in 2020, when they expanded the regional gas tax, if you're not in Northern Virginia, Central Virginia, Hampton Roads, or along I-81, you still pay a regional gas tax in Charlottesville or Albemarle. But instead of your regional gas tax going to your local transportation authority, it is sent back to go through Smart Scale. And so, and it's based on your VDOT district. And so everybody pays the same gas gas rate now. You know, before 2020, if you bought gas in Northern Virginia, it would be a little bit more expensive because of the regional gas tax. That is no longer the case. And so that is certainly an option for y'all as well, is requesting your regional gas tax be directed to the type of fund or a portion of it, as well as some of the other ones that y'all may want to advance. I will say I did a little bit more research over the last week. I know both of y'all have occupancy taxes on hotel rentals. 1%, if y'all were to follow that metric of many of the other entities, 1% would be about $1.6 million if you were to increase the hotel lodging tax by 1% and have that directed to transit. And so that's kind of put you in a little bit of a perspective of some of the revenue that you would raise. So it'd be about 1.6 million a year.
For 1 cent, did you say?
For 1% of the hotel occupancy tax.
Is that
1%.
for county or combined?
Sorry, what was that question?
We have one CACBD, Charlottesville, so.
Do we have the same lodging taxes?
We have the same lodging taxes
Yeah,
currently, but
yeah.
I think the question might still be appropriate, right? Like, as in, if you're saying it's 1.6, if we increase if who increases their tax rate? If the city increases their tax rate, they get 1.6, if the county.
That would be both. I went through both y'all's budgets, and y'all both pay 9%. So if you all both increased it to 10%, combined, it would generate about 1.6 million.
And since it's at one institute, that makes sense. And I'm gonna ask a really naive question, Danny, but, so the funding that we would obtain as an authority can be used for operational and capital?
I believe so with your authority. I've not gone through all the code on that. Each one is a little bit different. In Central Virginia, it can be used for operating and capital. But they put in Central Virginia, when they created their authority, they also put in a hold harmless clause of, I think, 50%, which meant that they could not reduce their contributions to the local transit agency by more than 50% with this additional revenue, because the General Assembly feared that, you know, with all the additional revenue, that the localities would stop contributing and the system would still stagnate. And so they, you know, and the legislators and the local officials all agreed that, you know, this was this was mainly meant for growth. And so they agreed to those hold harmless provisions. So that has been in precedent now.
Mike, you have a question?
Hey, Danny, Mike Murphy. Question about the regional gas tax, and if it is currently for our area being devoted to smart scale projects, who are the potential natural opponents of diverting it towards transit and away from those type of projects?
Probably the road construction folks. You know, that would be the opponents.
And so did VDOT or anybody else provide friction when this wanted to happen in other areas?
Not that I know of. You know, it happened in Central Virginia, but the idea of raising regional revenues statewide was a fairly new initiative in 2020 when all this kind of got moved. And it was part of a large omnibus. So there was a lot of moving parts that, as I mentioned about the idea of getting funding for the Charlottesville and Albemarle Regional Authority, if you include it in a larger bill, it becomes very hard to attack it on a standalone basis.
And then Danny, even for not knowing this is Christine Jacobs. The regional wholesale fuels, or the wholesale fuel tax that's collected here, it is going into smart scale. Do you know if it's going into the high priority program or the district grant pool?
District grant. All the regional gas tax revenue goes into the district grant.
Which I intuit from that to mean that if we dedicate our tax pool to the transit authority, we are also therefore significantly undercutting our regional smart scale pool. Is that an accurate assessment, right? Like, we're all, I think, gesturing toward that, I just wanna make sure, I wanna say it out loud.
If the only source we're looking at is wholesale fuel tax, then yes, it would have to be a one-to-one. It's really about, is there a different source that would also be included in it other than that wholesale fuel tax? But yes, the answer is yes, sure.
And welcome, I just, that's why I was any other questions?
I think when we started these conversations about directly, we were talking about that's no longer a source we would necessarily look at because of those impacts. You know, in the government study, we kind of looked at that as that ship had sailed as far as dedicating all of your wholesale fuel tax to limit pollution. But that doesn't mean there can't be some portion of it, it just will have a direct impact on roadway projects, which we already know are gonna have very large impacts because of the current budget situation and the reductions in project funding because of maintenance needs.
So this group could decide to or not to draw from the gas tax. But I think thinking of who might be opposed, would it not be the case that other folks in the district who are not in the Campo area might also see themselves as potential losers? So,
Can we talk about, I'm sorry, Danny, the amount of money that we're talking about here, what is the total? Do you know the total amount for just the county and the city and the gas tax?
No.
That would just have I mean, if you're talking about a $40 million number versus a $10 million number, with a huge discussion.
I don't have a copy of that, that's right.
When I looked it up a couple of years ago, I don't remember the number, but I remember that the amount of increasing the sales tax 1% was a lot bigger than increasing, or than getting the gas tax. So
Increasing the sales tax.
the sales tax was a lot more, yeah.
So the point being, there could be opposition, not a whole lot of juice to squeeze, and it is squeezing on a small scale.
Right, which would be a.
So of the revenue sources, that's not looking the most appealing.
Yeah, which would be a real problem, that's right. And Danny, this has been really great. Any other questions? Or any other thoughts you have, Danny?
I actually have just a quick one. With the grantor's tax, I have to admit that seems so odd, right? Like, I'm used to things like a grantor's tax or a recordation tax that are associated with housing, because there's that possible relationship with the thing you're funding. But this is like such an arbitrary thing to fund through this. Is there some kind of legislative history that informs why this is a way that so many localities have approached it?
Yeah, the history behind the recordation and grantor's tax being kind of connected to transportation is because of the benefits of those projects have on property values, whether it be roadways or transit. If you look at the most valuable land on the East Coast outside of Manhattan, it's usually around a metro stop in Northern Virginia. And so it was that kind of relationship of growth around major transportation investments that created that relationship between grantor's tax and recordation taxes and transportation investments.
And that makes sense when you think about it to connect it, yeah.
But they're not going directly for property tax or a land value tax, they're going for this very specific esoteric thing.
So in general then, Danny, I think what we're hearing is we have a lot of work to do. But we need to all get on the same page before we go to the General Assembly, is what I'm hearing very clearly.
Absolutely, yes. And I think it's a good time to do it. Y'all are striking when the iron is hot. I think a lot of the legislators will be very receptive with the overall transportation conversation. And so this will be, I think, the year to kind of come forward and make sure your hat is in the ring, so to speak. And so this is, y'all are doing it at the exact right time, and the right mechanism as well, with the authority having already been on the books and getting it activated. now the hard question is, how much are y'all looking for? And, what is feasible to your constituents?
Maybe this is Christine again. Can you say more about the statement that you made about attacking this as an individual piece of legislation versus going in through like an omnibus or a larger bill? Can you speak about that a little bit more?
Absolutely. That is just me being a legislative hack. And so anytime you put forth a bill, the General Assembly, I think, not this past session, but last session, dealt with something like 4,000 pieces of legislation or resolutions or whatever. And so when you're dealing with that number, depending on what day it is and how the legislators feel during a subcommittee hearing at 7 a.m., they can get a little persnickety. And so, having one item on a piece of legislation gives them their full focus versus being part of a larger omnibus that deals with Charlottesville and WMATA, fixing the deficit between roadway operating and capital. I mean, if y'all go for gas tax and you're also increasing statewide revenue, that fixes that transition of capital money for roadways moving over to maintenance, then that may lower any opposition because, everybody's boat is rising. And so they may not necessarily see that as a bad bill versus something that is independent and by itself.
And it doesn't have to just be one source too. I mean, you can cobble multiple sources together. I know we've been talking a lot about just one source, but you can do portions, 10% here, 3% here, to make.
Just like developer stack,
Correct.
same thing, same principle.
I just want to reiterate something that James said about the value of when transit. So when we did the BRT project in Richmond, one of the things we had to do as we were going through the process of developing and building it is go back and show the land values for every single property on the corridor for a 3-year period of time, and then they had to track it for 3 years afterwards, after we was up and running. So they can show them how the value has increased along the
And
corridor.
who's the they?
FTA.
Okay.
So
All right,
what
so
they
the
know,
feds.
because they're keenly focused on when transit projects of significance come, they understand that the value of that corridor goes up, and there's a potential that you can tap into that for funds.
Yeah, we've really seen that more in Virginia, watch that, property values. So the authority would be tracking that?
So there was just a larger project, so we could do it ourselves to track it. I mean, if we're going to do larger projects later on, it's probably good that we get out ahead of that. So anytime you're trying to do a kind of a BRT project, you dedicate on the source, they're going to say, what corridor are you focusing on? What are the property values there? They're going to track that. And they want to know how many, I think they told us 3 years or 5 years. So we had to actually go back and look up the actual property records for every single property along that corridor, every quarter of a mile. Yes, our intern said 1 2,000 doing that. And we tracked that for a period of time, and then we had to track it after the other one for 3 to 5 years.
So you have a baseline and then yeah, exactly. Any other comments or questions? We may want to have you back again.
Absolutely.
I have a question, but I hesitate to open this can of worms in this meeting because it might then become about this discussion. We often talk about from the transportation planning side, not the transit planning side. We're doing a lot of analysis to see which regions' smart scale projects were more successful because they were able to leverage additional funding through a transportation authority. And recognizing that this would be the only one that is a transit authority in the state, not a transportation authority. I just want to know if you have high-level thoughts on that. When you said this is the time to strike, the iron is hot, and legislators might be receptive, do you think they would be equally receptive to keeping it as a transit authority versus a transportation? Very heavy question, but I feel like hearing his opinion.
But is HRT a transit authority?
CETA is a
Yeah,
yeah, they have a transit fund, but they're not a transit authority.
So,
Yeah.
Danny, is there not another transit authority?
They're a transportation authority.
There is not, but there are regional transit. Sorry, I'll share it again.
The Potomac Rappahannock one?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different types of bodies that are regional entities. I think the type of entity is really not necessarily that important. It's just how they were created. MVTC is solely dedicated to transit, and they get a portion of the gas tax and they get the toll revenue. They are a commission, and that's just because of the way they were set up, and they were actually set up before NVTA. And so NVTC goes back 60 years. They just celebrated their 60th anniversary. And so their creation was kind of a point of time of where they were. I think if they had been created later, they probably would have been a full-fledged authority. But they were already around by the time that NVTA came about. And the Hampton Roads Transit Fund was created because there were some legislators down in Hampton Roads that forbid HR TAC, their regional authority, from investing in transit. They were very anti-transit. They said, we only want to build roads with this money. And so they, legislatively, as they created their regional authority, they forbid transit from getting any of their revenue sources, their regional revenue. And so it took nearly a decade later before the creation of the Hampton Roads Regional Fund, Transit Fund, which even though it is managed by HR TAC, it is a little bit separate in the code for them to be created to try to mitigate that issue that they did a decade ago, because life changes. And so that is their regional attempt to resolve the issues that they got themselves into and foregoing transit originally, which kind of is why Central Virginia, on the onset, dedicated a specific portion to transit, is to try to avoid that issue that Hampton Roads got into. So while there is no direct authority, transit authority, that gets dedicated regional revenues, there are transit entities, whether they be commissions or funds, that have that type of power. And so I don't think this would necessarily be outside the realm.
That's helpful for the clarification, because I kept seeing 100% transit.
Yeah.
Yeah, focus, so that's great. Yes.
I was just wondering, I wonder, Danny, if this is Scott from UVA, could you add, it just might be helpful, or just maybe I'm just a nerd, to add in the year that each of those were created? I think it's kind of fascinating, the evolution. If it's not too much work, if you know it, you know. When you said the one was 60 years old, that sort of surprised me, but it's just interesting to see the evolution. And I know you're talking about Hampton Roads, because I was there for that.
Yeah, Scott, I will have to do a little bit more homework on securing that. Some of it is in my head, having gone and done the initial research. I will just have to go through and double check my numbers. But yeah, I mean, it spans the gauntlet from 60 years ago with MVTC to the I-81 Commission, and was, I think, one of the more recent ones. So they're very distinct. I think from a legislative perspective, I don't think Senator or Delegate so-and-so really differentiates between a commission, a compact, authority, or a fund. These are regional entities that receive regional transportation revenues. And so that is really kind of their perspective for the most part. And I don't want to speak for our elected officials, but that's generally been my experience.
So if you think about our regional authority, it was already created a while ago, we didn't have funding.
Yeah, this was created in 2004.
Right.
Right, I think that's right. So, yeah. Oh, 09, sorry, I said 4, so it's 09. Same decade.
Same decade.
Not this one.
Anyway.
Been around for a while.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. And this was really helpful. And I know we may be contacting you again at some point for some advice or some thoughts or suggestions, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. I do want to give a shout out, or not a shout out, but our annual conference is in May for VTA. I think this will be a funding conference. We've invited Delegate Sickles, which is taking the lead on the WMATA regional funding that they're dealing with, as well as Senator Lucas, who's chair of the Senate Finance Committee. We have invited them to be our opening panelists to talk about the future regional funding, and I think there will be some other sessions. So please, if y'all are interested in May 28th and 29th, come to our conference, register, and hopefully, that will help y'all get some takeaways and maybe meet some other folks who are having very similar conversations. Our ability to bring all of our regions together to speak with one voice on the need for regional transit revenue will make us all stronger.
Andy, can you send us something about that conference so that we can, remind us and register for it or whatever it might be? Just want to make sure. That'd be great, because I'd be very interested in going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And where is it this year, did you say? I'm sorry.
Richmond.
Oh, Richmond. Okay, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Well, this was very, very helpful. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we will catch up soon.
Thank y'all.
All right. Our next item on the agenda is microcap. Garland, I think this is your baby.
I think that's me.
Yep, I think it is. Oh, look, Lincoln already has it up.
Great.
All right, so just.
It's good.
All right. Innovative, we have our partnership between Kat and Via, who is actually the behind the scenes operator. So, and
We're good. We're all good.
ready to go.
All right, hold on. Don't touch it.
I'm not touching anything.
Jason is really taking up the screen there.
All right, so how do I advance?
Don't do it. I'm gonna advance for you because you can't. You can't from here.
There we go. With that said, now we can move forward through the presentation. So the team that's behind the scenes that helps me on a daily basis is Sheila and Ariel. They're great partners. I actually have conversations with them on a weekly basis, sometimes daily basis, depending on what the weather conditions. Like we coordinated with them at the snowstorms. We were making calls on the fly. But these are just the two key components. You have behind the scenes there, the next level down, 6 additional people who have communications with us on a daily basis, and that team to make sure that whether it's road condition issues, whether it's presentation developments, whatever it is that we need, that we have the resources we need. If you move forward to the next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about background. We're going to talk about the service performance review and then opportunities and next steps for us. So next one. So we did a similar presentation to the County Board of Supervisors almost about a month ago, almost 2 months now. So Via came in, was actually doing snowstorms about a month ago. And Sheila, just tangent, I'm going off a tangent a little bit. She made the presentation to the Board of Supervisors, and because she was trying to get to the airport and it was snowing that day, she actually missed her flight and had to stay over. But she liked Charlottesville and had a wonderful dinner. So VIA is the world leader in providing for advanced public mobility solutions. They are expanding their footprint. 750 partners, 40 countries, 140 million rides. There's our, and their Canadian expansion. If you go to the next one, they're increasing their footprint in Virginia. So if you can see here, deep roots and deep commitments in the Commonwealth, 40 partners in on the Commonwealth now, 9-year partnership in the state, and then they're working really diligently with BDRPT. And as you can see on this listing, CAT is one of the providers there, and so is GRTC and HRT and Williamsburg Trans. So they're, whether it is operator or they're doing software solutions, they are having partnerships throughout the Commonwealth. If you go to the next one. So they also, at the meeting for the Board of Supervisors that day, which was January the 13th, that was the launch of their partnership with the Albemarle County Public Schools. So they actually have a system now where they're doing rides dedicated for some of the issues that are coming up in the public schools. And that has been a wonderful, from their estimates, it's been a wonderful partnership thus far, and they're working through that. We're looking to potentially, on the city side, something similar maybe in the future. Next.
Every time I'm over there, I see a microcap.
Yeah.
Almost every time.
Yep.
Just coming to
Yeah. Their footprint is expanding, and they're doing a wonderful job. So next slide. So once again, we've celebrated in FY24, 51,000, almost 52,000 total rides. Significant for a 1-year development of service. Actually, it was less than 1 year. It was 9 months that we were able to get almost 52,000 rides. That's pretty significant if you think about how normal transportation develops. It uses a slow drip. People get to know about the system, and then it continues to rise. They created 4,124 new accounts, and they do a survey system in your app, and you can give kind of a grade, and they got a 4.9 rating from all of the riders thus far. Go to the next one. So Microcat is a natural extension of public transit ecosystem. The system that we have right now, it was 6 vans, now it's 8 vans. We're looking at potentially expanding that number because the growth continues to expand. They're all 100% hybrid fleet. We're still running fare free based on the grant application that we received. We didn't want to we extended the offer of not charging anything on Microcat, even though the grant we had was basic on our fixed route system. We extended it to Microcat. So it will still be fare free through June 30th of 2026. So we got almost 1 more year. The accessibility issue is we have vans that are ambulatory and non-ambulatory, so they can pick up individuals with wheelchairs. So that makes this model, available to anybody. So we're not having issues with getting people with wheelchairs. So it's okay. Next advancement, please. So this is the slide that I focus in on a lot when I'm talking to people about how well Microcat is doing. If you look at when we started, which was November, they only had 500 riders that month. And we just updated this slide 2 hours ago. In January, we still have grown consistently. We've gone in December in January we made the presentation to the Board of Supervisors. We were in the middle of the month, so we didn't have the numbers. So we were at 6,400 riders for that month in December, and in January we're at 6,800. So the number continues to grow. And now we're still at a 4.5 rating, but what I really want to focus in on is the passengers per revenue mile number is going up. It's 3.5. This is a shared ride system. So this is not individual rides like you would get when you call Uber or Lyft. And that's the beauty of this product, because as we continue to drive, the algorithm continues to drive and maximize the use of the vans by pooling folks together, we can drive the cost down. If you go to the next slide, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So the costs for rides are starting to come down as we continue to put more people on the vans at one time. So as we were going from one individual ride, the numbers were pretty high, $30.16, basically an average ride. Now we're driving the number down, we're at $17.29. And we continue to drive that down. Now, there's going to be a point where we're not going to be able to drive it any further. I don't know what that number is yet. We haven't reached it. But at some point in time, the number is going to just bottom out. It's going to plateau. I'm not sure whether that's $15 or $14, but as we continue to drive that number up, we will definitely be able to see probably in the next 2 to 3 quarters.
Is that a per trip cost or a per rider cost?
Per rider cost. Yeah. Great question. So it's maybe a little hard to see, but there's a little, this is the isotope. So this basically is showing how the model works today. If you see, there's a little person in the map where it says pre-microcat. So it's showing you within the time frames, or whether it's 60 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, how far they can get. Now, when you have microcat, you can see how far an individual can get based on the use of the microcat product, which basically expands the service model pretty significantly just by adding in the 2 corridors that's operating right now. Next.
You might just refresh for people's memory, the 2 corridors that are coming.
Absolutely. So we are operating right now on the 29 North corridor, which is actually pretty close to the UVA area, all the way up to past the airport. And then we're in Pantops, which we're in Martha Jefferson Hospital. We have social services. So, and I was hoping to get the map that shows the frequency. There's a frequency map that shows where specifically trips are going. I wasn't able to incorporate that. We were trying to pull that in, but we weren't able to it's a pretty to download it. So hopefully the next time we do this, I'll be able to get them to make that change. But you'll see the map, it's a scattered map, and it shows it's basically everywhere. So it's not like I did it, which is really what I wanted to focus in on. It's not like individuals who are using the services are just going to 1 or 2 places. They're using it to go basically anywhere in those design corridors. It's been proven to be essential services. So 70% of the rides do not have cost, and I think that's really important. So having this microcat product is basically making it easy for folks to get around. And that's really what transportation is really all about. 30% of the riders have a house income less than $25,000, which is pretty significant. So we are checking off boxes where we're having access to folks who really need the services. And then 40% of the folks who have a long-term disability. We can see that because when you build your profile, you're giving some of that information. And there's some anecdotal information there. So as part of the impact of the marketing campaign that we did a pretty significant one when we rolled the project out. For the first 4 months, there was really intensive efforts on our side to get the word out about the product. We think it's been pretty successful because we saw the growth continue, and we're continuing to do that. So we're working behind the scenes right now to advance some of the things that you see in the app. So this is what you will see when you open the app up. You'll say the microcat product, and we're still being rated pretty high about people using the service. We did a commercial. We're looking at potentially doing another commercial, this time on Facebook. So there are things that we're working with VIA to potentially do pretty closely, hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days. If you go to the next slide. One more, advance one more for me. Thank you. So this is just an example. This is not our mapping, but this is basically shows the impact of a microcat product. So really, if you look at the left map, it shows like a normal transit system with routes. And then when you extend it to microcat product, you're in the zone. Basically, all those dots are basically saying you can go basically anywhere. So that last mile, first mile component that a lot of transit agencies struggle with, microcat is basically an answer to that, because there's an opportunity to go curb to curb or door to door. Things that are within 3/4 of a mile of a route, or basically if you've done a zone, anywhere within the zone. And that extends the services so you can use the fixed route, and extend your trip beyond the 3/4 of a mile by using a microcat product. Go to the next slide for me. So we're talking about integration. It was one of the things that we wanted to really focus in on kind of in phase 1, we get it up and running, work out all the kinks. Phase 2, we talk about really integration of our GTFS files, which are basically allows individuals to see where all the buses are. So there's an integration between us and microcat. And we were working on that. The goal for us is to have that up and running by August of this year. So we're working with our providers for our GTFS file, so it's getting cleaned up and being prepared. So when we do the next iteration of, we have a couple of bookings a year. When we do the next booking, after that, we'll be able to try to start the integration where you'll be able to see all of in the microcat app, you'll be able to see all of the fixed route system and all the microcat products at one time. Now, we're talking about potentially, does that cause potential issues with people being diverted from fixed route? There are ways for us to geocode when you would see a microcat product or whether you would be able to see a fixed route system. So there's discussions about doing that. So one of the examples that I've talked to the consultants about is what they've done for another client. If the fixed route bus system is within 20 minutes, you would not see a microcat product. It would give you, the only option it would give you is the fixed route. Because once again, we're trying to, the least costly thing for us to do is actually drive the system towards the fixed route. But if it's over that model, then you would potentially see a microcat product pop up. And you got to look on your face.
Oh, no. This is new since the last time.
This was in there. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember this either.
Oh, this was, yeah. These are, so all we, the only thing I did is updated those 2 slides where we, the new people and the numbers. That was it.
So I know we previously talked about, as in previously, I think, exactly 1 year ago, like maybe my first time that I joined the RTP. You were in the process of, I think, transitioning off of Transload for your buses. I remember we talked in some great depth about.
We don't use Transload. So I think UVA uses Transload.
There is, as we think about a regional approach to transit, I'm always excited when I hear of our different kind of disparate systems being integrated effectively. But I do wonder if further down the road, at some point, I would hope that CARTA embraces all of these services. They can have a nice, big, beautiful app. Is that going to be feasible, or is someone going to have to radically rejigger their architecture?
Both. Both have to happen. Great question. We have all bought different products because they fit different functions for us. Now and I think Mike and his team actually had a consultant look at how to potentially pull some of this together. Is that with Randy and his team? So I have not read that study, but I assume it's similar to what I hear in other places, meaning because there needs to be almost a clearinghouse, a database set separately that will be able to pull information from our individual systems. Our individual systems are designed for the functionality of what we're doing. So if I bought a product, it may not fit Mike and his team. So that we shouldn't limit Mike because we're trying to force him into something to use. We just need to figure out how to make sure that our individual products are in a clearinghouse that allows everybody to access it.
And you said all along with this group for you, ever since we started talking about this, that we wanted to make sure that the system is seamless with a wider.
Correct.
So they're not having to go from one app to another. We have to figure that out internally.
No.
So that it's seamless with them.
So CAT is actually looking at, we're coming up on where we have to get a new AVL product. So that's the system that allows you to see what's going on. The system we use right now is a legacy system. It's not very robust. It doesn't have all the functionality that we need. So we are going to more than likely move away from that product. It's pretty expensive to keep the same vendor that we have and get all of the new functionality that everybody really wants. So that process over the next 8 to 10 months, as we start our evaluation before we do an RFP, hopefully we'll shed some light on all of the vendors that are out there and the potential to have a clearinghouse where you'd be able to share the information. So that would be that's important to us because I know the end result is we do want a system where the individual should be able to see CAT, should be able to see JAUNT, and if necessary, be able to see UTS.
Do you know offhand, I mean, this is, but the app itself is buy-in product and the ability to integrate with buy-in product, right?
VIA has ability for us to,
They want it pronounced a specific way, they should have picked a different name, and not something that famously can be pronounced 2 ways.
VIA has a product that allows, and other places they do share their, they don't share their algorithm, but they allow you to feed in so you can see the positioning. That is something that we're having a conversation with them about. Whatever product we purchase, that we'd be able to continue to do that.
I'm just trying to figure out how much of this is a commercial off-the-shelf product from VIA versus how much of this is the result of some kind of like agile process that we're engaged in. Or that you're, I shouldn't say we in this.
So a lot of this is proprietary, but what we're asking for them is not to share the algorithm with everybody, but to share the positioning with everybody through what is called a GTFS feed. So we should be able to work through some of that.
If I can, Mike. So in our current, last time we were here together, Christine and Garland and I were in the throes of making the applications to the state, right?
Yep.
Ours has 10 separate applications. 2 of those applications are about, 1, piloting this strategy and potentially using this same software to do that.
Yep.
So that we can make it more seamless for residents.
Yep.
And 2 is that, basically JAUNT has 3 different business lines. One is the on-demand/demand response that is usable with a software like this. Then we have the demand response that is, pick on Randy. In Louisa County, that doesn't necessarily have the right density to use this exact model. And it would still revert to a reservation system.
Right.
And VIA and some of the other on-demand algorithms are not awesome sometimes with the advanced reservations, but they are understanding they need to build it. And then the third piece is Garland for his buses, Scott for his buses, us for the commuter routes that bring in people from Crozet and Zions and all that. You need a different kind of software that is just tracking those fixed route systems. And so everybody will have at least 2 softwares, I would guess. What we'd like to do is have it be invisible to someone, and actually,
Yes.
if we shared the same products, I think that would be great.
Yep.
It's just that we all procure at different time cycles. Scott just bought Transloc again.
Yep.
We're getting ready to buy something within the next 18 months, right?
Yep.
So, on my mind is, can we give weight to the fact that CAT is using VIA? We can give some weight, but not all the weight. We have to pick something that will work for John.
That's right. Yeah. So having that clearinghouse, which is one of the things that was pointed out in the study, is that because of the specialties of each transit agency, buying the one product is probably not an option for everybody. But we do need to figure out how to get a consultant or a firm that will create this port where we'd be able to send the information so you'd be able to see. Because there are things that I need that.
And I'm sure we're not reinventing the wheel, other than
We're not reinventing the wheel. Yes, we just need to work through it. There's some agreements that have to be done specifically with the proprietary companies that have to agree to make it done. And some of the things that we're trying to work through as we look at buying a new product for ourselves is having the language in there that would allow us to send out this portal to participate in having a portal as opposed to them rejecting because it wasn't in our agreement. So we're gonna work through that.
This is really great. I'm
Yep.
your official timekeeper though. so
Yep.
I'm not sure.
I only got one more slide.
Oh, that's great. That's excellent.
Can I get one question on
Oh,
that slide?
absolutely.
So
Go
the
back.
road preference piece, I had a question about.
Go back.
What's your wait time for microcap right now?
Ideally, it's 15 minutes, but we're in the 20-minute mark right now. We're at 20, which is why I think we talked about potentially 20 minutes if it's if it's less than 20 minutes, you wouldn't see the microcap product.
So all of the fixed route services that go into the county are on a 30-minute frequency right now. So you either need district grade microcap or you're still picking up people from the fixed route. Unless you improve the fixed route service.
So I actually had that same conversation with the consultant. They said it all depends on when you enter the app, right? So it is a 30, all of our models are gonna potentially go to a 30-minute, but I haven't correct. So I haven't really engaged in asking for a service or hailing a service, because depending on when I hail the service, the bus, when I hailed it, could be only 15 minutes away. So we're not necessarily downgrading, it's setting a parameter that says this is a reasonable time to wait. Is it 20 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? What is the thing that we're, as a group, comfortable with and saying we want to try to, the expansion of the microcap model, at some point in time, we're going to reach a point where we're not going to be able to accommodate everybody. What is that number that we need to start dialing it back? Is it a 15-minute wait that we're all comfortable with? And then if that's the case, then that's or is it a 20-minute wait that we're the comfort level? So that's the conversation that needs to happen. Yeah, but great question.
Do you know how many rides could not be fulfilled?
We do. It's starting to grow because once again, our numbers are growing fast, right? And it's a lot of folks are asking for rides at the same time. In the morning, in the peak hour time frame is when the heaviest components really want the service. Yeah. But there's a couple of ways to handle that. You can add more vehicles, which is an additional cost. Or you can start, once again, ratcheting down and requiring that more people pool together to make those trips happen. So there are all sorts of things we can look at. So just wanted to, from an environmental impact, we just wanted to talk about kind of avoidance for environmental, the tonnage of CO2 that has been removed. 44.82 tons of CO2 was removed by the use of the microcap product, allowing 6,224 trips. That is an increase. That's really, if you think about it, we're replacing around 22,917 car trips. That's pretty awesome. Yep. And that's pretty much my last slide.
That is really great. Are there any other questions?
Yes, so you might have said this, but I only remember I have it. You said there were 4,124 accounts created.
That's correct.
Do you know how many of those people converted back to users?
All of them.
Every person who created account took a ride?
Yes.
Or is that
Those are active accounts.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Not just like, oh, I downloaded it to my phone.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Active accounts.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, I need to make sure that's in. Say that in the presentation next time. Yes.
Other questions? Hang on.
Hey, Garland, I probably should know this, and I do not. Related to the cost numbers, metrics that you showed, I don't remember what slide.
Can you go back?
Passengers per, I think, passengers per mile or passengers per hour.
Yeah.
Are there,
Go back. Keep
are
going.
there any sort of
Keep going.
national standards
Yes.
for that?
National standards?
Or, are
Mm.
there any standards that you, because you, like,
Oh, I
your
see what
point
you're
on
saying.
this slide was, you're gonna get to a point where
Right.
this is about where you're gonna get, and I'm just interested in somebody who might be ahead of us, have they figured out what that point is?
I don't know the answer to that. I can ask
Okay.
Via, and that is it. I'm trying to think about, what's running through my mind is every jurisdiction is different, so every cost model is different.
Right,
Because this is based off of what we're paying the drivers here,
right,
so that number continues to drive down.
right.
So I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to give you a standard, but we
Yeah,
can see if we
I just
can.
wonder if there's like a range.
Yeah.
And then like the passengers per, I think there's one passengers per mile or passengers per hour, I can't remember what it was. Right.
Yes, the 3 point revenue hours.
I'm just
Yep.
interested in, what's a good number? Some of that's dependent on the kind of vehicle they're using, right?
So all of the vehicles are 8-passenger vans.
So the
Is there a
cost of that
standard?
is
I'm not sure there's a
7.
standard, but trying to drive that number up to close to a 4 or 5
Okay,
is what I was told is kind of an optimal number.
yeah,
It's going to be hard, and you may not be able to, if there's 8 seats available in a car, I'm not sure you're gonna be able to fit 8 people. That's just what the car fits. Yeah, so, I'm not sure. I can ask the question about what's an ideal, passengers per revenue hour.
Study delivered on this topic. I would say this 3.5 is very, very competitive.
Yeah.
I would say that anybody who could hit 4 would be extraordinary.
Yep.
Garland has the advantage of delivering it in a fairly dense area.
Yep.
And so that helps them to accelerate this pretty quickly. When we looked at this for 2 areas, the ADA footprint and in green, we're benchmarking trying to be between 3 and 4 in ADA because it's slower to do the, folks on and off. And anything over 2.5 with green would be a real success. So
Right.
it does depend on the geography as well.
Right.
okay. It just, that helps inform when you fit sort of the efficiency of this.
Yeah, I mean, 4 is a great number if you think about it. So you're half of your capacity in the van is taken up every single time you're using the trip. That's pretty amazing.
And when there's people climbing over at that point.
Yeah.
When they're about 4, the
Yeah.
person going to the back or not.
Can you remind me what the next steps are? Like, does this, where's the threshold where it starts going east-west instead of north-south, or that you add 50 more, like, what was the?
So right now,
this
this is a pilot.
Right.
This is conversations with the board of supervisors about what their next steps are. Our goal our goal is to try to live up to the expectations that were in the grant, which is we're trying to get that number down to about a 15-minute wait. We are above that. We're at 20 minutes right now. It's leaking towards 21 minutes. We want to try to get that back down, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that without adding more capacity. We're running pretty much optimal right now, if you think about it. So we're almost at that tipping point where we do really need to have a conversation about potentially adding more capacity to get your number down. But that comes at a cost. It's pretty expensive to start adding. Transit is not cheap, no matter whether you're doing fixed route or a microcat product. Transit is not cheap. So it's where do you want to put your money? Do you want to put your money in a fixed route bucket where we're potentially getting 35, 40 people over there? Or do we do a combination of that and you add more capacity on the microcat because now you're having more of a curb to curb feel, but also you're also hitting that last mile component. Those are discussions for the policymakers.
Because this was a pilot for Albemarle County, which of course is why it doesn't go into the city.
That's right.
When does the pilot end?
You have 1 year left.
1 year
So-
left. Okay. Thank you.
So we started the second year in November, and it runs till November, whatever it is, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I will just say, I
I hear credit, and I was over in Hawkins, loads of dishes the other day.
Yeah.
Boy, they are singing your praises.
Great.
And it works so much better than a big cat bus would for that particular population and what they're trying to do.
So what Diantha is talking about is behind the scenes. We had a conversation, pretty frank conversation with VIA about whether we could tweak their model to add another pocket. And we were worried about whether it was going to create an adverse effect on the timing by putting in loaves and fishes. Because when you start, it may seem like a small thing, but it's bigger because now I can't reach the next destination on the timing. And we ran several different models over a period of about a month and a half, and came back and said they think they can make it work.
And it has been great, because for that population.
Yep.
Because a big transit bus just didn't work for loads of
Yep.
fish with baskets of food. This has been great. And we appreciate that. Challenge.
No problem.
All right, any other comments or questions? We're right almost on time, so you did.
That's all I have. All right.
All right, we're going to go to our Regional Transit Authority Working Group update.
Thank you.
And this is gonna be Ann and Ben. All right, Ann and Ben, and I think Christine's gonna jump in too. So I'm gonna kick off and then turn to my work group, friends. So we had the last Thursday?
Yeah.
Last week. Oh, well, last week, we held our first CARTA organizing meeting. And now that the city and the county have activated. Yeah, we've been getting that for a good while now. And so we've all been getting that, but there's nothing, that's why Scott left. Okay, yeah, so we're good. Okay. Go ahead. Now that the city and the county have both activated the authority and appointed members, we can have our first meeting. So we held the first meeting. At the meeting, there were a couple of items. I'll speak to a couple of them and then turn over to Ben and Christine. We elected a chair and vice chair. So we have Supervisor McKeel. You all are testing my ability to maintain. I'm failing miserably. Supervisor McKeel is the chair, and the city council member Oshrin is the vice chair. The newly formed CARTA spent a lot of time sort of walking through a draft set of bylaws, and we made some changes. As this group will remember, we did sort of a draft set of bylaws, but they really needed some additional scrutiny as we looked at sort of operationalizing CARTA. So we've gone through the bylaws. Ben will speak to sort of intents and purposes and goals for CARTA.
Sure. So something we needed to talk to the board about was sort of the next steps. Part of that included the schedule for CARTA. We are looking at sort of offsetting the schedule of CARTA and RGP so that they'll meet every other month. So that's cadence of meetings will change, but we'll still be having a meeting about transit every month on the same day, fourth Thursday. The other next steps are sort of what is CARTA going to be doing, what are we going to focus on. I think initially we're going to be focused on sort of the setup of CARTA and making sure that it has operational capabilities. That also means sort of reviewing what transit agencies are up to and how we can be involved with that work in training and briefing. And then the other thing we're looking to do is address what the priorities are for CARTA. So we have a regional transit vision plan. We need to sort of whittle that down and figure out what are we going to the state to ask for money for. We need to be very specific about what we think we can do in the next 5 years and the next 10 years to actually fulfill that vision. We have applied to the PDC for a CRPC technical assistance grant to help us with that. There's matching funds available from the city and the county to go after that state funding. Even if we are not awarded that state funding, we still need to be able to do that work of prioritizing what sort of transit improvements we need to do in the region. So we're going to have to think through what do those studies look like with two different levels of funding. We should know more about the funding later this spring, and it would be available later in the summer, but we're going to have to do some sort of preliminary work to get ready for that one way or the other. So, anything that we missed from the
No, just more specifics on the schedule changes, what that would mean for the regional transit partnership, this group that's meeting tonight, is they would meet in the even months of the year. February, April, June, and so on. So what you'll be receiving from us will be a cancellation of the existing recurring meeting calendar invite and a new one that's every other month. And then the CARTA, the Regional Transit Authority, will be meeting on the odd months. So March, May, and so on, and then there'll be a separate calendar invite for that.
And we really felt like that you all would not be upset if we freed up your calendars a little bit, so. Anyway.
You're welcome to come watch that, I believe, as well. because it's an
Absolutely,
open
open to
meeting,
the
so-
public.
And the meeting time is shifted to 5 o'clock.
Yeah, we did check it.
The RTC will stay the same, right? RTC will stay the same. The RTA shifted their time because of availability at 5 o'clock.
Make it a little bit easier for members.
They said he's open to public.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, absolutely. And we haven't, we're not meeting in this big room where, we met last time in the conference room, so that's probably where we'll be. We have technology in there. It's a little smaller, not quite smaller group. Yeah. So, any questions about CARTA and our meeting changes? All right, then let's move on, and our transit provider update. Albemarle County Public Schools, I think we have someone, there you go. Would you
Hi,
introduce
everybody.
yourself, Daniel, and you can give us the update.
Yes, so I'm Daniel Richardson. They have recently hired me back in October to be the Assistant Director of Transportation over here. So I'm working alongside Jamie and William Shiflett, who's the Deputy Director. And of course, you guys probably know Jamie, she's our Director. There's not a lot of updates that we have. We do have a big technology upgrade that's taking place. So that's going to be one of our biggest undertakings of the year. It's basically an upgrade to the software that we're using for routing all of our school buses. It looks like it's going to be fairly smooth because the team here, has done a good job of keeping all the map information up to date. But really, that's all we have. I checked with Jamie before this, and she didn't really have any, major announcements to make either. But it's nice to see everybody. I hope next time I'll actually be able to show up in person. I had the flu, and that's why I have, half a voice right now. And that's why
We're happy that
yeah, I thought you might.
But that's great. Does anybody have any questions about Albemarle County Public Schools transportation? Well, thank you, Daniel. We'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Scott had to leave based on some of the issues that were happening in the community, so we'll move on to Garland, Cat, and City of Charlottesville schools.
So, one thing on, public transit side, Cat, we're being asked to, remove our services from the grounds of Fashion Square Mall, tomorrow is the last day. So we're going to be temporarily using the service access roads, all drive. We worked through that. I believe it's a temporary fix. It is not a permanent fix. We're still looking for a permanent location. We have 3 routes that go there, the 5, the 7, and the 11. So it's important that we try to make sure that we get something that allows in those routes. The temporary fix though right now is what we believe is the public portion of the access road. The property has been bought. There's private roads and public roads. We are trying to make sure we stay on the public road portion of it, but we will see what happens. We are working through that model, and then we've also reached out to Albemarle. We used to actually have our services all through up through there. There was some damage being done to those buses that were there years ago, so they asked us to remove our services, which is why we moved to. That's been on the first place. We've been in contact with them. They said they were assessing it, but we haven't heard from them. So right now, the temporary spot is we're going to the activities involved. Do you have to walk further? Is it gonna, going to, no? I guess the other store is technically still open then. So where we are, they'll have to walk across the parking lot. I'm not sure. What we were told is that at some point in time, there will be some places set up, so I don't know what that means for the access components, for folks trying to access the belt, but we were still, within the parking area.
So is this may be related to the construction that's going on. I mean, I don't know, I'm just asking, you don't know. Yeah, because there is going to be major construction.
There's already
And I know
construction
they're
going on
putting
right
that,
now,
yeah.
so this is different.
Yeah.
We got a call, got an email and a couple of calls. They actually wanted us to move faster, but they allowed us to have 27 days. We have to study it faster than that.
Anything about schools?
Right now, the school is operationally working. No, there are major updates on schools.
Okay. Mike, John.
You know, a lot of that stuff is really putting us in a position with external processes to be successful, so, my CFO is retiring, I had over 100 applicants, 11 interviews in the last week.
That's great.
I went out to bid for some communications and design contracts, 26 different responses, you know, but was a dozen or more of those, 6 of them in the past week, so, things like that, are consuming a lot of time right now. Yeah, I think I said last time, we had a really successful January retreat, and we're gonna, kind of put a bow on that at the March 12th board meeting, and have the board kind of ratify those goals and assign some timelines and metrics.
And we look forward to having a representative from John, maybe at the April meeting.
Absolutely. I talked to Lucinda about that today. There's really only 2 people on the board who are, good, eligible representatives right now. I'll speak with them.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right, and Katie, DRP2.
All right, I have a brief legislative update from our legislative fellow. So the General Assembly adjourns on February 22nd, sending an amended budget proposal to the governor's desk, along with a handful of transit and rail bills. The budget included funding for WMATA and language about tolling transit vehicles, that's specifically in the Hampton Roads region. But otherwise, not a lot of change or additions much in the rail or transit side. There are a couple bills headed to the governor's desk that deal with specific issues for VRE and for Virginia's transportation district commissions. The most impactful one is HB 2619, which would require any private contractor that provides public transit services to benefit and compensate an employee of said company at the equivalent rate to a comparable public sector employee, as well as require collective bargaining agreements be recognized by that company, among other provisions. The governor has 30 days to act on the budget and all the legislation on his desk. The General Assembly will reconvene on April 2nd to address any vetoes or amendments. General Assembly leadership has warned that a special session is likely to be called to address budgetary impacts as a result of policies coming from DC. If you have any specific questions about legislative stuff, you can send me them in an email. I can get Evan to get back to you. Unfortunately, I'm not the most qualified to speak on behalf of that. Otherwise, we're pretty deep in our grant reviews right now on our side. I will give that what I keep seeing coming through as we've been in this meeting is our engineering team is extremely excited about the concrete being poured at the Belmont Park bus stop for CAT today. That's been, a lot of work, a lot of time. As Alan says, bus stops are harder than bridges to build. So we're very excited to see that moving forward.
I would agree that bus stops are harder to build than bridges. We've all been there over the last couple of years anyway. Anyway, all right. Any questions for Katie?
No question for Katie. I'm going to just say, I forgot to mention that when she didn't. So, yeah, the Belmont one coming. They have, they ran 2, And then there are 4, which are 2 counties, 2 cities, and the second grade. And I pray that all of the, design, work plans all get finished, and we can move forward with that within the next 2 weeks.
And I think one of the county ones is on the Woolly Mills, is it not?
I can't remember exactly.
It's okay.
We have, no, whatever the 2, we've given the, whatever the county gave us.
Yeah, I think that's it.
They have a listing of your top 5, we have that from Jessica. And we put 2, the top ones that were in the priority order, are the first ones that get done in the next batch.
Yeah.
So there's 2 there, and 2 in the county, and 2 in the city in the next batch. Everything is really expensive, so I just want you to know, so I'm just, for, illustration purposes, we thought the Belmont stop was gonna be $30,000, it's $120,000. Wow.
Yeah, there's some work to that.
From 30 to 100.
So there was, infrastructure, we had to move, water lines, a water line and a, cable line that's underneath. They did that pretty quickly. They thought it was gonna take 2 days. They did it pretty, they did it in like 8 hours. They all done it. Then there's a grading issue that I went through today. The rebar went in. I just looked at it before I came here, so they may be able to pour concrete tomorrow or at least by Monday. So that is moving forward, and then they will move from that one to the Manor, which was a challenge in itself. But the Belmont one had the most grade issues, which is what I took on.
Yeah, there were also some design costs on there that we weren't thinking of, like there's a historic property that's around the corner that has a view of the bus stop, so we had to account for that, and make sure that there were no impacts on the historic property.
I was wondering what the cost difference was, what was creating the cost difference?
Well,
A lot of little things.
so the grade at Belmont was having to straighten the grade out is really where a lot of the cost is. Because the standard by FDA says on the sidewalk, you no more than 5%,
Yeah, for the 80%.
and then on the actual bus pad itself, no more than 2%. Both grades in both areas were well beyond that, so they had to take care of that. That was part of the major issue there. But we
They
had to tie it
have that,
into
they have that again too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll have to, and they had to tie it into the existing, for ADA purposes, the existing, so we actually had to pour more concrete, we will have to pour more concrete, to make a sidewalk, to tie into the existing sidewalk. It's 75 feet away.
So what that tells me is we may not get as many bus stops as we had hoped.
We're not gonna even do that, so
Yeah.
we'll have to go back and ask for more money.
Yeah.
But as long as we start to spend it, then they see that we'll report and they understand, the state understands what's going on. I don't think we'll have to.
The state's also the one managing the design for us right now, which has been a huge help. Yeah, that moving the process forward, like that means they're also completely aware of what we're doing here and of what kind of issues we need to have on the board.
Thank you, Kate.
Yep.
We appreciate the help and the update. That's great. Any other questions?
It's all Alan.
All right. All right, other business, I do not have any updates or reminders. I do want to just say to folks that, and I don't have, the last alert I've received is there's an active attacker with a knife in the area of Emmett Street, and Alumni Hall was the last area that I, do you have anything earlier? Or
I just think he's in custody.
He's in custody. I have not gotten an alert that said he was in custody. You have not gotten anything. So anyway, just wanted to let you know before we left, he was, I think, somewhere on the Emmett Street up by Alumni Hall in that area. So I'm glad he's in custody. And, as opposed to just the alerts, which is what we were getting. Okay, so with that, I'm going to adjourn us. And our next meeting for this group will be April, and I don't know what the date is. I'm sorry. No, not that, no, March, April, May. I'm sorry. No, we're
April.
we're April. It's really important we get these days on our calendar. April 24th. So I'll adjourn us to April 24th at 4 o'clock, same location. And you all have a lovely evening and the rest of the week.
Thank you.